here representing Pankaj Razdan, our MD. In the next few minutes, we'll actually talk about our own experience and our thoughts and learnings as we embraced digital transformation in our organization and went through the whole process of building the digital culture. So these are some of the trends that we see in the industry. Rahul spoke about it, and I'll just try to capture some of these elements. We see a significant wave of digital disruption happening, and this digital disruption is not happening only within the industry, it's happening across industries. Industries are getting threatened by organizations who are not part of the industry but outside of the industry. I think there was a brilliant example of what Rahul mentioned about the automotive industry. We also see the life insurance, especially the general insurance industry, getting impacted with the Uberization of the transport system. Increased regulatory demands, it's not only increasing the cost of doing business, but it's also putting a restriction in terms of the creativity and innovative products, and no other industry than the BFSI industry, which is experiencing it for the last few years since the whole financial crisis came up, how regulators have become really protective and restricting some of the innovative products which were there in the market. And India has been experiencing across sectors, whether we call it the banking sector, the life insurance, or the mutual fund sector. Consumer behavior is undergoing a significant change. All of us as consumers are getting influenced. There's an interesting example. What happened when Uber and Ola were not there? We were all used to a way of, transporting ourselves from one place to the other. Uber and Ola has influenced our behavior very, very significantly. And that's the experience we expect from across all product manufacturers or product offerers. We don't really, as consumers, really differentiate and say this is X industry, X product, so they can't offer us. It's more the manufacturers who think about that way, but not really the end consumer. So that's impacting us or forcing us to look at these changes. The data, I think as consumers, people are sharing a lot of data in the digital ecosystem. There's a lot of information. Some is voluntarily shared and some is implicitly shared. And as this information is available, consumers are expecting more personalization rather than customized products being offered. And which is helping organizations to really look at product offerings which are personalized products based on certain risks, which organizations are able to identify and focus more on segmented product offerings. Increased competition, again, the competition as I spoke earlier, we see competition coming from nowhere. Sometimes we, as we look at the industry landscape, we miss out in terms of what are the things which are happening in the ecosystem. And there are examples, one of the examples clearly we all experience today is cameras are becoming redundant. Mobile phones are taking the place of cameras, which was really not thought of. Some of the legacy leaders in the space have now become redundant as years have gone by. The pressure on margins, I think the whole inefficiency between the gross margin and the net margin, that's coming under the scanner. There is, consumers are not ready to pay more. Consumers are expecting a lot more at a cheaper price, plus organizations, the cost of delivery is really increasing. So how do we really manage the inefficiencies between the gross margin and the net margin is something which organizations are forced to think without really increasing the price, because there is a new entrant in the system who is coming up and providing a better service, better offering at a cheaper price. These are some of the drivers for digital transformation that we see over the years. I think from being big and being the preferred option for a consumer because of the size, it's moved away from being is our products going to influence the customer, the product USP is going to influence the customer, and moving out of that, saying from a manufacturer going to a place where consumers are present, to moving away and talking more about it's become consumer experience intensive. And that is what is driving the whole digital innovation. And this digital innovation is today disrupting. We have the examples of Netflix, how it has impacted the media entertainment industry significantly. We spoke about Amazon impacting disrupting the digital business. At BFSI as a space is not far behind, and Rahul mentioned about the whole digital lending business. This whole lending, which used to be a brick and mortar kind of a model, has completely come on to mobile phones. And we believe that over the next few years, so-called safe havens, which organizations really thought, or industries they were thought, think they are in, are going to get disrupted, and they have to start thinking about it today, and that includes our industry as much. More importantly, I think the focus on revenues, I think, and this is not to by any way kind of not look at improving operating efficiencies. But what is important as we look at digital transformation is, what is it going to lead to? Is it only lead to improving efficiency, because there's only a limitation to what benefit the organization or the industry can really derive. But the focus on revenues is what we believe is extremely, extremely critical when we look at digital disruption. One of the studies that we had picked up gave us this data. They said highly engaged customers are 6 times more likely to refer to the brand. They are supposed to be 2 times more brand loyal, and more importantly, a customer who is digitally engaged are going to be 26% more profitable than their peers. And these are, I think, good enough reasons to embrace digital transformation. We think this is extremely important statement, and that's what we discuss every time we sit in our management meetings. Decisions really determine the destiny. What decision we take, and this applies to every sphere of life, but as we look at digital adoption and as we look at digital transformation, with the scarce capital that we have, where do we really allocate the capital becomes extremely important, and this is what we believe, and this is what we deliberate every single day in our organization. Some of the criteria we thought is important as we go through this whole digital transformation and embracing the whole digitization of the organization. First is, we believe, intellectual honesty. What I mean by that is basically, do we really understand the DNA of the organization? We can say we want to digitally transform ourselves, but are we as an organization have the DNA? Do we believe we can embrace digital disruption? It's good to say one and PPT, but really as we go through the execution of the process, are we going to really take a huge amount of time? Can we really adopt to the new normal as we talk about in a digitally transformed organization? That is extremely important for us to understand. The pace of disruption which is happening, we look at disruption which is happening within our industry, but sometimes we miss out what is happening in the overall ecosystem. I'll share a very rudimentary example of what happened with one of our advisors, one of our distributors. And he's a very, very old-time distributor of our life insurance industry. And he shared a very interesting thing, and he's like so-called old generation gentleman. He said this Flipkarts and Amazon are actually impacting my business. I said, how is it impacting your business? Because they are not selling life insurance, distributing life insurance yet. He said, no, my whole administrative ecosystem has got challenged. And he was explaining how his whole model was around personalized service. And when he said personalized service, he said he had a set of some 22 office boys in his office who will go to clients' houses, pick up the checks, bring it back. And that was a service model that he had built, and that is what his customers really, found it a great service that he was providing. He said with Flipkart and Amazon coming in and offering 15,000 rupees to these office boys to act as delivery boys, almost 80% of my boys have gone away. And every time I try to hire a guy, earlier I used to hire him for 8,000, 10,000 bucks. Now I have to pay 15,000, 16,000 bucks, which is not affordable for me, which is basically the gross margin and net margin inefficiency that I'm talking about. So he said, and then it suddenly struck me. He said, wow, so what has he done? He said, I've been forced to adopt digital platforms. So he says, today I send a link to my customer, call up my customer from my office and say, can you please pay the money? It's only that X segment of customers who say, we are not digitally savvy, we can't pay electronically, is where I send and pick up the check from the customer. Otherwise, I ensure that they courier the check back. But, it's actually the disruption which is happening. I gave a very small example, but this is happening all around our place. The cultural rigidity, I think, this is all about people. This is about how organizations have been built. And there are a lot of examples of how cultural rigidity in globally has led to organizations not adopting digitization or digital solutions, or adopting the new trends which have happened and led to organizations die. This cultural rigidity is important to understand. Many times we miss out because there is a decision which is taken at the top to say we have to adopt digital tools, we have to transform our organization digitally, and we forget about what's happening on the ground. And this whole rigidity is something which impacts, and that is where sometimes these are the decisions which lead to some failures of the decision that is being taken. Management determination. I think the management has to really determine whether they are there on it. This whole embracing digital transformation, is it from a tactical perspective, is it from a long-term perspective, the shift, because it's not a magic formula to say it will get transformed overnight, but it is over a period of time, how consistently, and there will be failures during this journey, is the management. And when I talk about management, it includes the investors, it includes the shareholders, where they are ready to live and partner with the organization on a medium to long-term basis to ensure that this whole transformation is successful. Lastly, but most importantly, is the financial health. Digital disruption is not cheap, and that is what we have also experienced as we went through the whole process of investing in and building digital platforms in our organizations. I think sometimes our estimates, our projections go wrong, and this is important to understand how much of money are we ready to invest and put on the table. How much of the money are we ready to really write off, because not every solution that we develop, we roll out, are likely to succeed. There will be failures on the way, but those failures give us good enough learning for us to adopt and move on. Lastly, as I said, as I mentioned earlier, I think the focus on revenues. Yes, there is a need to digitize processes to improve efficiencies, but ultimately, unless and until we focus on revenues, that this whole transformation leads to capturing a larger market share or creating a new customer segment, we believe embracing digital transformation can give us only that limited benefits. These are the three pillars we think are, what we have picked up in our journey of digital transformation. Digitization of products, digitization of the consumption of the channels, and the digitization of service, built on a bedrock of data analytics and risk and compliance to deliver better customer experience. The digitization of products, I think every single industry, and there are a lot of professionals from the BFSI space here, everybody is experiencing it. We are experiencing it on a day-to-day basis. Whether it's the life insurance industry, we all spoke about the example of the lending industry, the health insurance industry, the general insurance industry. Across the board, the whole products are getting digitized, which means the convenience to offer and deliver this products and service to customers is improving every single day. Lending, I spoke, 3 to 4 weeks is what it used to take for personal loans at one point of time. Today it happens in minutes. Whether it's P2P or digi lending, which has come in. Health insurance, I think there are enough and more data for health insurance companies to understand about their customers, so that they offer the right product at the right premium. The whole consumption and the channel models, life insurance policies are being offered on web portals at a speed which nobody had ever imagined. China and US is leading the way, and India is picking up in that space. Banks, customer portals, bank portals are now going beyond just offering banking services. There are non-banking services which are offered. We also believe that this is a way to know and understand the lifestyle, the need and behavior of consumers, so that the banking products can be more customized and personalized. We have robo-advisors, which is getting into the space of wealth management. I think very interestingly, robo-advisors have the ability to not only understand the normal behavior of an individual, but also to understand the cognitive behavior of individuals, which is helping really personalized products. Emotionally, in a physical distribution world, a physical advisor is able to connect with the consumer more emotionally, but here a robo-advisor is able to go deeper, sometimes help discover the customer's financial needs and offer the right products. Also at the same time, offer the right product by picking up data elements which are there in the ecosystem. I'll not talk much about this, because I think every single BFSI player today it's becoming extremely critical to survive by looking at how do we really digitize the service. Whether it's an omni-channel, the personalized experience one is looking at, the process efficiency, and the bot solutions becoming more and more, not just from digital tools, but becoming more and more human as days and weeks go by. Some aspects of digital culture that we looked at, that we learned in our own journey. I think building a customer-centric culture is very important. I think it's not about doing digitization for our purpose, doing digitization for the organization. It's more about looking at the customer, understanding the need of the customer. You can build an extremely sophisticated, embrace a phenomenal technology platform, but if the customer is not able to, appreciate it, is not able to utilize it, this whole thing goes for it all. So keeping the customer at the center, I'm sure everybody does it. I think it's important for us to keep that focus. Next one is data. I think getting obsessed with data. I think without data, digitization will not have much sense. I think getting every point, every movement, every interaction today with a consumer, with a partner, with the ecosystem, there are enough and more data which is getting captured. How do we get that data on, how do we get that data stored? How do we get that data analyzed, and how do we utilize that data becomes very important. Now this is an obsession with data which should not be only lying with the chief digital officer or the chief data officer of the company, but it has to drive across the board. Every single employee in the organization has to appreciate the fact that he or she, when he or she is engaging with a customer, with a partner, is actually explicitly and implicitly is capturing some data which is relayed back into the digital ecosystem of the organization. Innovation is very important based on these findings. Is the organization ready to innovate? And innovation is not about only innovating and coming out with successful product and services. It's also about ready to fail. And I'll talk about it in the next point. Collaboration. I think as we build a digital culture, the functional silos go for a toss. I think what becomes very important is, do the functions come together to work with each other, to leverage on the opportunity which is there in the market, because it's not about a digital team designing a digital product which can really lead to a success. It's about different functions coming together and building a digital platform which can really move the organization from a traditional organization to a digital organization. And lastly, again, an important point to look at is exploratory mindset. As we embrace the digital journey, there will be failures. The organization need to acknowledge that fact, pick up the learnings of that failures, take that failures, integrate it with the journey of this digital transformation, and not let it go by. So the exploratory mindset of an organization is very, very important as we build a digital culture. Why is the digital culture important? The risk of transformation failure. I think one of the studies that we picked up said an organization which focuses on culture while doing business probably has a 5 times greater financial performance. And that's where the whole culture is extremely important. It's not about strategy, it's also about culture. Building a digital empowered workforce. We've seen, and again, we have been a traditional organization, and we have tried to transition ourselves into a more digital organization. We have seen how the whole structure has to be revisited. It's not an easy decision. How the people who really work on the whole digital business have to be more empowered. I'll share an example of one of the CEOs of our life insurance industry shared with us. He said, as we are moving from a traditional organization to a digital organization, he said one of the things that I did was that I made informal attire as a mandatory thing. So we started coming to office on Monday. Typically in BFSI space, we're all used to suits and very formal attire. But he said in a digital organization that really doesn't work. He said we started saying on Mondays we came in t-shirts and jeans. Unlike where normal organization earlier we were coming on Fridays, we were coming in t-shirts and jeans. But here we said we changed ourselves. Second, he said earlier we used to talk 15 minutes on what are the things we are doing in the digital space in a 1-hour review meeting. And then here he said, I started looking at 50 minutes is what we just spoke about, what are we doing in the digital space. So it's only 10 minutes we started speaking about financial performance. So he said, every time, it took us around 6 months of a time to really make people appreciate the fact that we are trying to transform ourselves. It's not about me, but people down the line. And he shared a very interesting insight. He said, while my ability to influence my direct reports was becoming difficult, I realized there were a set of people below when I walked around and who were like 20 years younger to me. They were able to more connect with me and talk to me much more openly, and we're appreciating the fact that we are moving in the digital organization. And that's my third point when I talk about attracting talent. As we look at the millennials, as we look at this country becoming younger by the day, I think the young potential employees are looking at organizations who are adopting new technologies, who are ready to experiment and offer digital solutions to customers. So, it's embracing the whole digital transformation, and not just from a business perspective, but also from a perspective of attracting talent. And that's why it's not about just speaking it, but about showing that the organization has that culture. Just try to put a perspective between how a traditional organization with a traditional culture and how an organization with a digital culture looks like, and what are the attributes it shows. Adaptability to change. An organization with a traditional culture, it's slow, but it can be innovative. A digital culture organization is far more agile. The whole working style, and some of us who have been part of traditional organizations with traditional culture have experienced this. They are more siloed, whereas an organization with a digital culture is more collaborative. I think there are no boundaries around. The org structure is hierarchy based in organization with a traditional culture, whereas in an organization with a digital culture, it's fairly flat. The risk appetite, very, very cautious. An organization with a digital culture is exploratory, it's ready to take the risk and move on. And finally, from a customer experience perspective, organizations with a traditional culture are customer focused, which means they design things and solutions which they believe it's customer focused and customers accept it. But an organization which is more digital, which has a digital culture, focuses on customer centricity. It's more about, is the customer accepting my solution, my products or not? That's what really people look at. How do we go about building this whole digital culture? One is about the organization, and this is a tough one, to really revisit our whole organization structure and say what it requires to transform our organization to, from an organization with a traditional culture to an organization with a digital culture. Looking at technology, it's not about identifying and adopting the latest technology, it's about identifying and adopting the right technology which is required for our business. Talent, it's an important aspect because, we need to have the right set of people with the right understanding of the technical aspects and who are ready to adopt and has the ability to adopt the right technology. The partners, as an organization, I think the world is moving to a model where there are partner ecosystem. Not everything can be done by us as an organization, as a company. We also experience it every single day because there's only that much, because as a manufacturer you can only do that much, but there are enough and more providers or startups which come out and provide solutions which help us in speed to market. Looking at partners and identifying the right partners is extremely important, and complementing them with the right skill sets. Building of teams, I think cross-functional teams, and this is one of the ways that we realize it's an approach to break the siloed way of working. It improves efficiency, it improves faster decision making, and lastly, but more importantly, the training aspect. I think as we build a digital organization, we can't let go of people of the past because they bring in humongous amount of experience and knowledge into the system. As much as we getting new people on board who are technically more savvy, getting the two married is very, very important. But for people who are there, I think training on technology, training them on the right skill set, training people on cross-functional working is also important. If people are used to getting only siloed working, having a very functional model of working, when they have to work with multiple teams, and so there is a skill set which is required. And lastly, but extremely important, another point is about this whole program management. Every team that we build from transforming an organization into a digital organization, as we build a project team. I think this whole program management is a skill set that is required. It's not very easy. It does not come very easily, but that's an important aspect that we realize ensures this whole transformation journey is effective. Some derailers we have experienced in this journey. I think the whole complexity, I spoke about it earlier, of being intellectually honest, understanding the complexity of the industry, the complexity of the system. If there are multiple legacy system in the environment in our organization, the complexity only multiplies. If the industry is complex, it increases. If the industry has not really demonstrated adopting of new technology, but if you want to be a first mover or a disruptor, that leads to further complexity. And finally, how our partners really respond to this whole transformation is an important aspect. Mindset shift. Quite a few times I've touched earlier, but I think in the organization it starts from the top. It's not about speaking, it's about doing and committing ourselves to say that we will do it, and only as it flows down from the top, and getting the people on board this whole journey important. Sometimes at the top it is agreed, but there is always a gap between agreeing and executing, and unless that shift in mindset happens. And this also happens because there is a threat, there is a fear in people when people look at about loss of jobs in the process. I think that is an important aspect to be considered. The speed, the pace is important. We can keep deliberating. We've seen, once we lose the pace, there's somebody else who has got ahead and captured the market. How do we build in this whole journey? How do we build a model of adopting any new technology changes which has happened? That's important. The skill set piece, I have touched upon it earlier. Security, it's becoming more and more important every single day. We have enough and more to talk about and read. We hear a lot about it. Information security, and this sometimes impacts the mindset in an organization with a traditional culture. The ability to take a risk, looking at what is there in the market, even though there are solutions today to protect us, but there is always a fear that something can go wrong in the process. And finally, cost is an element that I spoke about. Investing it right and channelizing the limited capital that we have to the right place. We have enough and more options and enough and more opportunities to digitize, but where do we really focus the limited capital that we have? And are we ready? Are we in it on the long haul, or are we really looking at it from a short-term tactical perspective, or are we trying to ape the market, ape the competitors who are trying to do it? Is an important aspect to consider. But what is more important is our investors and shareholders really buying into this whole journey of saying we are going to transform our organization from a traditional organization to more of a digital organization.
Really beautifully presented the whole digital transformation journey which you guys are doing at Birla. How has that impacted in the business? Would you like to share some things
Well, Pankaj is not here, right? So, okay, I'll try to answer, share one example of what happened in the life insurance business. One data point I can share. Till March 2016, 98% of our business was getting sourced in the form of physical paper.
Okay.
So as March 2017, as we closed March 2018, so we rolled out a digital platform to onboarding customers, and this is more for our partners. So as you know, life insurance is more an intermediary-driven business. It's not end consumer. We looked at our advisors fraternity and said we should build some digital platform. So March 2018, we had close to 76% of our business coming through the digital platform.
Okay.
So from close to 2% to 76%, that's the journey. It was not easy. It's about what is the value proposition we demonstrate and say if advisors were to adopt this platform, what is it they are going to get. But look at it from an advisor's mindset. In an earlier world, we used to get a form filled up, hand it over to our branches, and the branch will pick up and do the data entry. Right? Here, one of the advisors told us that you are saving your data entry cost by telling us to do data entry. Right? So this is very simple. These are some of the aspects. We never thought this is a mindset which will be there. So we have to we have to talk to that mind and try to influence that mind, saying that it's not just capturing that, but what we are trying to do is by offering you a digital platform, you had a point of sale. You are only selling, right? And then you have to walk into a branch. Now look at a city like Mumbai, from say Andheri to Churchgate, it takes you 1.5 to 2 hours. But if that point of sale becomes your point of transaction, you save the whole effort that you take in the 2 hours.
Absolutely.
You can probably use that 2 hours to go and talk to customers and source more business.
Sure.
Okay, so it's not about providing tools, it's about sometimes selling tools in this own level.
Great. Thank you very much. Great. I think it was very insightful. Any questions? Okay, there we have one. The mic.
So you touched upon two aspects which are relevant as well as probably people would face this often. One is about how do you cost you had shown as a impediment. It can actually derail certain initiatives. So and then budget is always a constraint. So in competing set of requirement where digital would probably need to get more allocation of the overall spends on technology, how do you really work on, say, emerging technologies? Because there is always an element of unproven in market. There is element of experimentation. Okay, you are really exploring. So how does it work? Is ROI a metric which generally works in the products or platforms which you have seen succeed? Was it ever making sense initially? So how that decision takes place? How do you get it right? Is there anything which you have seen works better for those decisions to be taken? And second part is, you also mentioned that for innovation it is necessary that we also look at possibility that we learn along the way. So there will be certain failures. You will need to also write off certain things where we invested and it doesn't work. When you look at scaling up, or initially there is an expectation which is unfulfilled. So at what juncture and how do those difficult decisions get taken? Because it's not just about a decision about a platform, a service provider, or a particular technology. It is also about people who have engaged time and careers. So a lot of people are invested not just with money but with the time they've invested. So these are two difficult decisions to take. So any experience around it which you can share, which can become a guideline for people who would look at ways to do it better.
So I think both questions are related. So I link it to the 3 points which I mentioned. It starts from saying what is the objective. If the focus is clearly on revenues, if the focus is on efficiency improvement, there are constraints. But if the focus is clearly on revenues and there is a clear visibility of what that revenue could be, Raul spoke about Amazon, and somebody was sharing with me. Amazon looks at the fact that the GDP growth of the GDP of this world is $84 trillion, and it is going to touch like $120 trillion by 2022, and this is at a 3% growth rate. And they say that if you were to get a 5% share of this GDP growth, just imagine the kind of money or the business revenues that they will have, right? So that's the opportunity. It's not about the processing efficiency. It's not about just the convenience which you provide to a customer. But how do you really capture this opportunity? If that revenue, the focus is very clear. That's one. Second is, I spoke about management determination, and that management determination comes from the shareholders and the investors really buying to the point that this is what we want to really invest in, and this is what we want to. It cannot happen that is one function, a chief digital officer decides that I want to transform the organization. It cannot happen. It is not a chief digital officer's role. He or she at the most is an enabler. He or she brings in the skill set, but the commitment has to be at a larger level. Okay, the management determination is important. And the third aspect of saying, what do we do with cost? Cost is scarce. Capital is scarce. All of us know that capital is scarce. Where do we really allocate this capital? As I said, improving efficiency, adopting new technology for the purpose of improving efficiency has a limited upside. There is an upside, but it gets plateaued at a certain level. But if the opportunity is large, and we have we have in this country the adoption of technology or the digitization of the stock market ecosystem. We would have never imagined 20 years back the kind of volumes that happen today. And I spoke, Rao spoke about the medallion of the New York taxi drivers. What happened to the stockbrokers, the exchange membership fees, right? Changed completely. Today, you have 150,000 terminals across the country, and people from close to 200, 300 towns in the country actually trade on the market. But there is an investment which was required. The focus was very. The identification of the opportunity was very clear. Will there be? I can share with you what I spoke about the digital platform that we created for our advisors. We failed twice. Third time is where we were successful. We failed twice because we are more customer focused, we are not customer centric. We designed something which we believe will deliver a better experience to our customer. In this sense, when I'm talking about it's a customer that we looked at is the advisor. But actually we are looking at improving our efficiency. We are not looking at what value we provide to them. When we started, we redesigned, we took some inputs. And as it stopped, as the investment on the platform really stopped really low, we have to now move to the next level because there's somebody else in some stage coming up and saying it's a 3-click process. We want to have something in 3-click. We don't have the time, 20 minutes filling up a digital form. Okay, but that's a commitment as a management we have made. We've said yes, but this is the journey because a digital platform means we don't need to open. We have 450 branches. We don't need to open another 350 branches. But if we have to reach out to 900 towns in the country, digital is a solution. So we are looking at that opportunity. But there will be. I think management determination and commitment is the most critical element.
I'll just take that as the last question.
So hi, you spoke about this transition from the conventional traditional model to the digital model, and you spoke about what are the benefits that are there in the digital model. However, during this entire transition, the associated risk dynamics would have also changed. So there are certain risks associated with the conventional traditional model, and now there will be newer set of risks which are associated with the digital model. So I'm referring to things like cyber security, data privacy, so on and so forth. So what are you doing for safeguarding against these newer risks? And some of these risks may be so new that even the knowledge and the experience of people who are there in the organization for these new kind of threats would be limited. So how do you safeguard against those risks?
I think one is first is to be aware of. One of the areas is this whole risk. We deliberate a lot on the risk, and it's important to keep deliberating. We also believe we will not be able to have all the skill sets to know the risks which are there in the ecosystem. Cyber security is a very, very specialized area, and the threats which are emerging in this space of cyber security is increasing. The complexity is increasing. Ransomware, it's not about hacking, but it's about also blocking the way of doing business. So we have to partner. We have to partner with the right set of people who can help us and provide that technical skill and knowledge. And we need to have the right set of people who can adopt that knowledge, who can understand that language, the specialized language which is there, and try to build building an architecture which will protect. Because ultimately today our key asset and I think our key asset is data. We don't want to really compromise on the data. We have enough storage and we read enough of those things in the media in terms of how data has got compromised and how organizations have lost money. But it's not just about loss of money because today insurance companies cover cyber loss, security loss. It's not about the monetary loss, but it's about the loss of trust. It's about the loss of trust, risk. I think that is what we have is a set of people who understand this, who evaluate on a continuous basis. It's not a one-time exercise that today is a risk review and somebody does, but on a continuous basis. But also at the same time have a partner ecosystem who can continue to work and feed us with information and keep challenging our, sort of concept of ethical hacking. Sometimes it may fail somewhere, there will be gaps. It's a continuous process, it's a continuous investment. And that is why I said, it's not about a one-time investment. It's not about one-time investment. You build a platform, you rolled it out, you have done, penetration testing, and that's it. It's about a continuous process, and that's a risk. Some of them we may not have envisaged. We may also face this challenge. You never know. But we have to be aware of it.